Welcome to Launch Stories. We're all about educating Chilliwack entrepreneurs, and surrounding communities are welcome as well, but our concentration is building this community in Chilliwack. And thanks to our gold sponsors for helping put these monthly events on, the Chilliwack Economic Partners and the Chilliwack Innovation Network. And thanks to the Chilliwack Chamber of Commerce, who are supporting us at a silver level sponsorship. So thank you, Chamber. And thanks to our partners for organizing Launch Stories, Cowork Chilliwack, Currency Marketing, and Zynim Ventures. And special thanks to Elise McAlpine for running all the AV equipment and recording the show tonight. And I think we should be able to see her up there. And so if she's hit the right buttons, the show is complete when we hit stop. And it's amazing when I go through it after that there are very, very few, other than my flubs, that have to be covered over. So I am thrilled to introduce you to our guest this evening. He's the founder of Evolve Digital. Please give a warm Launch Stories welcome to Daniel Kanis. Welcome, sir.
Thank you.
So before I jump into this, I'd love you to give us an elevator pitch on Evolve Digital.
Oh boy, elevator pitch. I should have known this was coming because you do this every time. Evolve Digital is your one-stop shop for everything web management, is usually what I tell people locally around here in Chilliwack. We tend to service a lot of small to medium business owners who are just, maybe they use the keyboard like this, and so they don't really know how the web works. And so we come alongside them, build them systems, build them websites, do whatever it takes to make sure that they're recognized online and that they succeed online. So,
thank you.
Yeah.
You shared your Instagram, both personal and business, with me. And before we go much farther, I need to dig further into this Miata thing. So how many Miatas have you owned?
2, just these 2.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so this one actually was just recently wrapped.
That's correct. Yeah.
Got it. Why Miata?
They're fun. I don't know. Growing up had, all my older brothers had many interests into cars and whatnot. And so I guess I got that bug too. And so I think we're coming up on 15 vehicles now.
Wow.
And so these are just 2 of those vehicles, I guess.
Well, I think these are a couple more, actually.
Yeah.
You had a whole Suzuki thread going there on Instagram and thought, wow. Yeah. And ATVs and so forth. So
that's Chilliwack is amazing for that.
Was that a family thing to get out into the wild? And
not completely, no. I think it was just kind of in my younger 20s. I mean, I'm 27 now, or 26 now, so not still young 20s to some of you, I'm sure. But I don't know. I love the outdoors, love Chilliwack. It's a great place for exploring. I think that it's got a lot of untapped potential and show. So taking the Suzukis, taking the quads out there, it's great.
Nice. So you grew up in Chilliwack?
Yes.
Tell me about your upbringing.
Yeah, grew up just a couple blocks from here, just around the airport. We just recently had Flight Fest, and so that brought back some memories of seeing planes just doing their laps. Great place to grow up. It was really quiet back then, it feels like. It feels like recently a lot of people have come to Chilliwack and called it their own, which is pretty exciting too, to be honest. But
Next photo is you. I'll circle you so everybody's familiar there. And we talked previously, and Daniel was saying he's the youngest of 5 boys. And were they just going, hopefully get a girl at some point, and then finally?
So it was kind of funny. They all seem to get married. We all seem to get married, actually, later on in life. Like he got married super late. He got married super late, somewhat late-ish. Really young, and then there was me. So it took a while, but now the family's growing like crazy.
So at this point, you said you were in grade 10.
Yeah,
and you were a youngish looking grade 10, but at that point you got the bug for computers. Talk to me about that.
Yeah, so that was kind of the semblance of this photo. Was right around that time. I was really big into sports, really big into tennis, and wanted to build a tennis website. And found out that you couldn't really do a whole lot with websites back then. They're very templated and very, you do what we tell you can do almost. And I didn't like that. So I went and started, I started working with a web page, found out that I could change a couple things here and there, and then realized, hey, I can tell a computer to do things. This is pretty cool. And then that just kind of fueled it from there.
Was there computers in the house? Were there other technology-minded people, or was that something different with the youngest?
Yeah, I think there was always computers around. I don't know what made me exactly go into computers completely, but I on a trip to Holland, I fell off a swing, hit my head. It was a big thing. And my mom says, that was the key indicators, some sort of, like, it was a bad concussion for 2 days in the hospital. And she's like, as soon as you came home, you just picked up computers like that. So I don't know if that's what it is, but.
Wow.
So anyway, that's the story.
Because you seem to really take to it. So what you're saying is science says if we smack someone in the head, they might become a computer genius. Is that what you're telling us?
Yeah, practically.
Okay. Because very early on, you did show huge promise, and talk to us about this project, HyperToss.
Yeah, so HyperToss, the name might seem a little bit odd, but it was hypertext because, of course, I was obsessed with HTML when I was in grade 10, and hypertext and then OS for operating system. It was kind of just a passion project to fuel innovation. So I found the best way for me to learn was to take on a project and take what I've learned and then apply it to that project. So HyperToss was the idea that I decided to go with because I was like, what better than an operating system? So it wasn't actually an operating system. It was just essentially a website that was a wrapper that just, it had windows that you could drag around using some technologies at the time. And I kind of built a couple things, built like a little app store. And it was kind of just a passion project for me. And then I was approached by a teacher at my high school at the time. I was in grade 11 by that point. And I was showing him, like, I'm just playing around with this. And he's like, you need to go to the science fair. And I was like, well, that was back in grade 8, 9 for our school. And he's like, no, we can get you to the regionals at Fraser Valley regionals and UFE at the time. And so he sent me off to regionals. Then that won at regionals, got a nice scholarship to UFE, and then went to nationals where it won bronze. So I think both these pictures are national levels. I think one is earlier year and one's later year. I went 2 years in a row.
Got it. And I saw they have a listing of these projects, and you also won scholarships from the University of Ottawa as well as Western University. Yep. Were those specifically to go to those universities?
Yes.
So did you end up turning those down essentially, or is that money still out there in case you decide at some point you're going to do some continuing education? Or
I don't actually know, to be honest. I turned those down because obviously they're both like even Western University scholarship. I think maybe that's Calgary. I don't know. It was definitely not local here.
Got it.
And so I just turned it down because, hey, it's not local. And the regional scholarship was actually better than what I won there. I had to do better there in order to get a better scholarship, but not good enough. So.
And how did you do it back to back? Like you said, you did it in grade 11 and in grade 12?
Yeah. We figured we had a good thing going, so we'll do it again.
Cool.
Yeah.
That was awesome.
Yeah.
Coming out of there, you did end up going to UFE into their computing science and did a CIS diploma. Tell us about that experience.
Yeah, I was never big for school in general, but when I had that scholarship sitting there with all that money that could be used for schooling, I thought, well, what better way to do it than to go to UFE and get the credentials? And it was a really eye-opening experience because networking, it was really good for my networking knowledge and my basic computer knowledge. Just like, how does a computer work at its core? Let's build that out. That was really good. The programming courses and whatnot, I tended to not have as great of a success with, mainly because at that point I had already taught myself a lot of scripting languages or little basic programming. Like in high school too, I took like a Java course and stuff like that. So at that point, it was a bit disappointing on that side of things. I don't know how it is now. It's been many years. So after 2 years, I decided to call it. I was going to do 4 years, but I figured it seems to be an industry where it's the more you do, says a lot more than just sometimes what you know, because if you do, then you'll learn along the way.
Yeah, I guess if you're going into a 100-level course and you've been doing this every waking moment and teaching yourself, you probably found it was pretty rudimentary, didn't you?
Yeah. So I took those courses, and then I was still working full time on the side. Just because, the courses were kind of like you just had to show up, and that was pretty much it. I'm sure some people, if you were starting out, it would be a lot more of a struggle. But if you had already learned the concepts, then it was breeze, so to speak, I guess.
And so after that, you landed your first, I would say, real job in computing. And tell us about your experience with ARPA. And from what I looked up, it's the Association for Reformed Political Action Canada.
Yeah.
What did you do there?
Yeah, a bit of a mouthful, eh? What we did, so their mission is to educate, equip, and encourage Christians to reformed political action was their thing. So they're a very political group. I, however, was not so political at the time. I was working at the farm, doing farm stuff, thought I was going to be a farmer kid. And then I got a phone call out of the blue from the executive director, who so happened to be the brother-in-law to the teacher I mentioned earlier. And so, la-di-da, everything comes together, and they found out, hey, this guy's a computer guy. And it was a good time. I learned a lot. It was a sandbox environment, I like to call it. Nonprofits. It was a non-for-profit. They needed a webmaster at the time because they wanted to expand their web presence. And so I did a lot of that kind of stuff. And it was kind of a carte blanche, like just blank check, do whatever you need to do to make our web presence better, as long as you understand the mission. So yeah, it was pretty fun. And
they're based in Ottawa. Was it ever talked about that you were going to move to Ottawa, or could you do this remotely from the get-go?
Yeah, so they had a couple locations. When I started there was not too many people working with ARPA Canada. It's probably about 5 or so. And so initially I worked out of the Yarrow office, and then worked there all the way to the end, but would be in Ottawa quite often. And I found out that my job started off as a webmaster, but then once the web was kind of figured out, it slowly transformed into IT and some other stuff. And so when I left, I was actually shocked with how much more than just webmastery I was doing with them.
And what year was that?
That would have been when I was hired, 2018, I think. I was 3 years out of high school, I think.
So the web's pretty mature at that point. Social media is a part of it. Were you involved in social media aspect of it as well, or was that somebody else?
A little bit. It was mostly dealt with by other people for the social media aspect. But when it came to videography, they definitely hired me on I was actually part of the hiring thing. Was 75% roughly is going to be webmaster, 25% you're going to have to learn video editing, and so I did.
Got it.
Yeah, it was fun.
And then somewhere along the line, fixing printers and networking became 30%. Or
yeah.
And so you have transitioned away from that, but they still are a client of yours.
Yeah.
That's a tricky transition to say, I want to quit, but will you be my first big client? How did you navigate that?
About 5 years in, I didn't actually know that it was so much IT, so much video work, so much not webmaster work it was. And so I didn't really know at the time. I just knew I had this entrepreneurial itch I wanted to scratch. I had done a lot of videography work with Derek, who's here as well. I did a lot of that kind of stuff on the side just to scratch that itch. And so when I left, I was thinking to myself, you know what, I think I want to do webmastery on my own. It wasn't until I left that I realized how much webmastery I was actually not doing, I guess. And when I left, they essentially broke my job into 3 different contracts. So they did one person for video, one person for IT, who I got on board, lovely guy, based out of Alberta. And then at the webmastery, they're like, you've built everything so far. You kind of know how the systems work, so it's best that you just keep going with that. So it was pretty amicable. I had a really good working relationship with the people there, and yeah,
nice.
Yeah, it was good.
And talking about the website presence, Did you start that from scratch, or did you inherit some technology that you then needed to learn, or was it matching what you already had expertise in?
Yeah, so the web technology stack that I chose was the LAMP stack, we call it. So it's Linux, Apache, MySQL, PHP. I mean, when I was learning web stuff, that was definitely the hot topic at the time. Like, and still to this day, a lot of people like WordPress sites. A lot of sites, a lot of what powers the web is behind PHP or JavaScript frameworks. And so I kind of just stuck with that.
You seem to be good at many, many things. You're now here at Cowork Chilliwack, and I've been kind of spying on you from the corner. And you mentioned videography. Well, your video work is amazing. You seem to have a grasp of, from server side, full technology. Where do you think your limitations start and stop? Do you consider yourself a designer as well, like a front-end developer, or what? Where's the parameters around Daniel?
Yeah, I would say not a designer. Videography is kind of a weird one. I'd say my skill set is very analytical, technical, building out data systems. How does data relate to each other? Great. I love that kind of stuff. Videography, it was just kind of repetitive. You just do it enough, you get good at it kind of thing. But it was never like, I'm not like that next level. So when you're looking at my videos, the quality of the video is all thanks to Derek. He's the one doing all the lighting and making those videos look amazing.
Okay.
I learned the process, the analytical, the how to edit a video. How does this work? You can break it down into a process, and I'm obsessed with systems and processes. I love that kind of stuff. So I'd say that's where it starts and ends. Got it. Mostly.
And you mentioned Derek and videos, and so you do you still do wedding videos, or is that something you've now said, you know what, I'm done with that, or tell me about the wedding video side of your activity?
Yeah, so like I said before, it was really a need to just scratch an itch, entrepreneurial itch, and so doing programming full-time at ARPA at the time, wedding videos was a perfect complement to that, to kind of get a little bit of a creative flair to it, even though I wouldn't classify myself as a major creative. So I delved into videography, met Derek along the way, and we paired up a lot and did a lot of wedding videos together. Now I still advertise I do wedding videos. It's more for nostalgia's sake at this point. I'm not heavily advertising it. And any wedding videos I do get, I'm usually like, hey, Derek, what do you think about this? Can I be your second shooter? Is kind of what it's turned into.
And shooting videos is not for the faint of heart. Like, this is a once-in-a-lifetime event, and you have to capture these beats, and you can't say, let's cut. Can we redo that again? I didn't get the vows. Like there's got to be at least one wedding video horror story that you've gone through that you can share. Yeah.
I don't try to reflect too much on the mistakes I've made, but I definitely remember some heart and throat moments where you miss a very crucial moment, which is why I would say, as a sell to people, is if you're thinking about getting wedding video, maybe 2 people is not a bad idea, 2 videographers, because then, you could be sitting there filming the vows and then the battery dies and that feeling is not a good feeling. And so having 2 people, obviously you want to try to get ahead of that and obviously not have the battery die on you. But I mean, as you learn too, learn on the job kind of thing, you're going to run into mistakes too. And so having that backup is always crucial.
Speaking of family, you are definitely in a growing family. How many grandkids are there at this point?
So I believe I have the newest grandkid, so I'm the favorite of the family for now. And I think we have 9 in total. I think it's 8 boys and finally a girl. And my parents had all boys too, so this is the first Kanis bearing name girl in a while.
And I grabbed this from your Instagram as well. So, but going solo, we talked about it a little bit. What went into that? You're married. You're thinking of starting a family. You've got this steady paycheck, but what called you to entrepreneurship? Is that something that runs in your family, or are you the first self-employed person? Tell us about that.
Yeah, so my dad was kind of just a salary kind of guy. It wasn't really, entrepreneurship wasn't really in our family, so to speak. But I just knew that's just what I wanted to do. It's just something, like I said, it was like an itch. I can't really explain what it was. It was just this knack for always wanting to learn more, always push boundaries. And so that was a great way of doing that. And Tanis, my wife, on the last slide there, she was probably the biggest force to, hey, go on your own. Like, she saw that it was eating me up, and she said, just do it. Like, just get it done. And so, I went out on my own, and I've never looked back, and I don't regret a thing. It's awesome.
So did you do traditional things like a simple business plan, or did you just like dive off the deep end? And tell us what that looked like. Yeah. And also, I guess that's part and parcel to transitioning your job into a client. Like, how did you navigate that conversation?
Right. Yeah. So going solo, I knew that I wanted to do things right the first time, so to speak. But that being said, you're not going to know everything about business. You kind of just have to go into it to some extent. But I did read, the first book I ever read was suggested to me from another business owner, The E-Myth Revisited by Michael Gerber, I think. And that helped me because I'm a systems guy, a data guy. And so I'm reading that book being like, this is fantastic, because it just tells me, the reason why McDonald's is so successful is because they have systems in place. And so it was kind of a light bulb moment. And so I just poured over planning for probably the first 2 months. Wasn't too many clients coming on board. It helped that I had ARPA in my back pocket already as I left there. That was actually a somewhat slow transition. I think I said I was going to leave in January, and then it turned out to be June or something by the time I actually left. So I left them in a really good place. Didn't want to have any bad blood. And so they were in a really good place to, move on without me. Everyone had been onboarded at that point. And so, but there was still a lot of work to do. And it kind of teared off, I'd say, into the fall as they started to learn life without me around. But I knew that the initial bit there, I had guaranteed work that I was familiar with. And so that was a bit of a comfort blanket. But then all of a sudden, now having 70% of my job to just plan, to build pricing tables and that kind of thing.
That's interesting. My dad actually suggested that I read the E-Myth. Now, you read the E-Myth Revisited because I'm twice your age, basically. But interesting story about Michael Gerber, the author of that. I went to a conference after about being in business 10 years, and it was all about systematizing design and marketing firms. And it was held in Cancun, and it was called Mind Your Own Business. So the first part of the story was actually going to the customs in Cancun, coming into Mexico, and they're asked, "What are you here for?" And I say, "Mind your own business." But I'm bummed. But can you imagine this very systems-oriented individual being the opening keynote, talking to a group of 500 designers about how you need to run your business like McDonald's? And there was all this like, what's he talking about? We're so unique, but it was super interesting, and I took away from that so much. And learning that from the get-go of you need to try to step out of your business as much as you can and work on it. It's tough, right? The whole premise of that, one of it is the baker will start a bakery because they were working at a bakery, and why am I not doing this? And then you realize that running the business, there's no time to do the baking, right? Yeah. And so have you found yourself in that situation of like, how do I run this business and do this business?
Yeah. Yes. I think every entrepreneur has that issue. I think it comes and goes in waves, just like the work sometimes comes and goes in waves. Sometimes you find yourself so caught up in the business that you're not working on the business. I think a good gut check is the fact that I get really frustrated when that happens. Like, I'm like, I have no time to work on the business. I know that's that kind of time, however small it feels like in the moment, is what's going to really build up for success in the future. So it comes and goes in waves, but I think my priorities have always been try to work on the business. And so delegation is huge. And sometimes it takes a bit of humility too, I think, to be like, I can't do this all by myself. I need to hire people. I need to have people. I need to build a team that's going to help fulfill this idea, because by yourself, you can't do it by yourself.
So give us a timeline. How long have you been solo or running Evolve Digital as your primary business, essentially?
In the format it's in now, only about a year, almost to the date, like just over a year, in the all-in-one web management agency. In the videography side, like I said, it was kind of like the scratchless itch. Just as a sole proprietorship, I was running it for, it's probably in the 7th year or something like that now. Yeah.
And so a year in, part of that, so you've just had a baby. So you probably decided to do this just as you were learning that you're going to be expecting a baby, or pretty close, right?
Yeah.
And so that facilitated you basically having to give up your home office to be a nursery, and you landed here at Cowork Chilliwack and took a large office. Yeah. That's a huge jump. Like, how did you find that transition?
Yeah, coming to Cowork Chilliwack was awesome. Talked to Rebecca, and she showed me around different offices. And at the time, I think you only had a small one available. I'm kind of sitting there thinking, well, I've got all this video equipment. I don't know where to store it all. And so I was like, it's not for me at the time. And then we found out we had a baby. And then a little while after that, I got I think an email from Rebecca. She was pretty on top of it and said, hey, we have an office space here that's a large office like you requested. Would you be interested in seeing it? I'm like, where do I sign? Like, get me out of this office, because I knew that, we needed a nursery. We only had a 1-bedroom. I bought a house with my brother. I just, at the time, was a bachelor, so I was like, I'll just take the bedroom downstairs. It's fine. And then not knowing that I was going to get married and have a kid. So, yeah.
How have you found that work-life separation now? Has it been helpful, or are you at home still working? Like, how does that work?
Yeah, I try to separate it quite well. The previous job, ARPA Canada, they did a lot of seminars and stuff on burnout and the signs of it, how you can prevent it. And so I found a good thing for me was to brain dump. So I have a great program I recommend to anyone, Monday.com. Mm-hmm. So I do pretty much all my work out of there for the most part. So I have a terrible memory. And so just being able to, as soon as something comes in, dump it down on paper, then I'm not thinking about it. So then when I go home, I'm rested and I can just focus on wife, baby, whatever it is.
And you quickly outgrew that large office and now have an extra large office here with 3 desks. Tell us about hiring. You've done a couple iterations of that, and your mileage may vary, I understand. Like, what did you think you first needed?
Right. Yeah. So heading into January, I had just picked up a couple contracts that were saying, essentially telling me, like, hey, you're going to be doing web mastery, a lot of web coding kind of work. And it's going to require almost all of my time, not to mention, again, like what we were talking about, working on the business. So I was like, well, how do I balance that? And at the time I thought, I'm doing a lot of work that's administrative, but I didn't actually quantify it. I just, in my head, was like, it's a lot of administrative work. And so I was like, I got to hire an administrator. And so I went out and hired a admin, but I feel so bad for her because it was just like I had no good systems or processes for onboarding or how I did things or the rhyme or reason yet. I had really good pricing structures and some of the systems when it came to taking a client's request and then submitting it and getting it all filed, but it wasn't great. And so I found out pretty quick that having an administrative help was making me do admin work still. And then so then it didn't quite work. So I learned to flex pivot and hire a webmaster instead, and then slowly train him up in the same kind of skills. And then,
I think one of the notions starting out is you think, I'm going to get an employee and that's going to double my productivity. We're just going to be able to do twice as much. And then you realize, okay, well, half my time now is trying to, especially if you're also trying to define what these systems are, is trying to explain it and refine it and manage it. And it's some frustration there. So how long did that last in that scenario?
I think it was just under 3 months, like 2.5 months or so. And then I, just realized that it wasn't quite the right fit. I needed to, kind of step back, reassess and figure out what I really truly needed. And it wasn't an admin. So.
And you also learned a valuable lesson of having those difficult conversations. Were you stressed out about how am I going to have this conversation, or you just go in there and rip the Band-Aid?
No, I have a hard time. That was a big struggle for me, I think, because it was the first time I was kind of in a position where to do that. Like I never had to necessarily let someone go or anything like that. So it was tough. I think you want it to be the best, but again, from other books I had been reading, people, I forget the list of names, but there was one book that really helped me was just some great people were laid off from their jobs. Like Oprah Winfrey was apparently laid off. I don't know the rest of the list. I think Steve Jobs. So it's like some great people who went on to do great things, but they just weren't the right fit. And so you're actually doing them actually a favor in a way to just be like, look, this isn't the best fit. Like we can't succeed as a team here, but you could succeed without me. So actually me being so-called attached to you right now is actually probably hindering where you could potentially be. And so I think that really helped frame it in my mind of being like, okay, this is good. Sometimes it's for the best, right? For both parties. So
you realized what you needed. How did you go about finding that person?
So it kind of was providential. I just happened to be, so I have a great church community, and Josiah, who's now working with me, we were just chit-chatting. We were on sound. We do sound together, and I think it was after a service or something. We're just chit-chatting about, next goals and whatnot. And he was thinking like, he had run an IT company for a bit. I'm probably going to butcher this, but he was running an IT company for a bit, didn't really love it too much, settled for a different job, and then was like, well, I think I'm going to go go to school, learn some programming, and hopefully maybe that'll be the career path for me. And he's like, but I'm not completely sold on it. And I'm sitting there thinking, I need a webmaster right now. I picked up actually some projects from him he was too busy to complete. So then I took it on. And so I'd already read some of his code, and I was like, hey, this could totally work. So that was probably the best, because then he could learn kind of my systems, the way I did things, and slowly get up to speed. And also the individual who can just kind of like take something and just run with it a bit. And so I knew it was like, I had a good gut feeling about that one, that it was going to be a great fit. And then it would enable me to still deliver on the promises I made in those contracts, but also at least have a little bit more time now to focus on some of the admin stuff that's still there and all the work on the business stuff.
So what is Evolve Digital Business Services right now? Like, what is the full stack that you're offering?
Yeah. So we offer quite a lot, and that's based off of some of our key clients and what problems they've experienced. A lot of small to medium business owners, they're kind of frustrated sometimes with having to coordinate multiple different contacts for all of their web management needs. And so they're looking for someone for ads, SEO, typically like your traditional marketing agency. That's kind of the one half of the section. And then they'll also need to talk to someone who maybe does video, and then it needs to run for their ads. Now all of a sudden this business owner is talking to 3 people or 2 people. And then, we want something custom for our site. So they go to their marketing agency and they're like, we don't do that. Like, it's something that's completely crazy. And so then us being webmasters, programmers, people who aren't just, working with WordPress templates, we're able to build them whatever they want. And so being able to scale their business for them, connect different APIs, build a custom program, whatever it is that meets their need. So then it's great, because then they have one contact for everything digital. And so you asked what our services are. It's pretty much what's in this little circle. So we have custom WordPress sites is kind of, in essence, sometimes our bread and butter. Like, a lot of people know us for that. And so we kind of build sites from the ground up with markup, styling, not too much plugins or themes on purpose, just because sometimes that can slow sites down. And then, videography is still somewhat of a core that's just definitely complements the marketing services. Marketing is ads, SEO, and analytics reports, stuff like that. Then, of course, there's hosting, domain management, DNS settings. Some of those terminologies scare small to medium business owners who don't know what that is. And then the last one is just kind of for fun to scratch another itch is live streaming, just like you have here in this studio. I like to mix video sometimes for fun. And so I have this little stream cart that can go, if you're getting married in the middle of a field, it could stream it if you needed from multiple cameras.
Nice. Yeah. And I think one thing that separates you, and you mentioned it, is your ability to do custom application development. You sent me some projects, and so I'm just going to go through some of them. This is a JAW portable pricing 3D calculator and project management software that you developed. Describe what this is. Yeah,
so I can't take credit for the 3D part of it. So the 3D part of it was developed by Unda. It's actually at the bottom there. Some guy out of Australia. But working with him and then working with the business owner, so he had some, quote, very rudimentary quoting system built into this software, but it just didn't work for JAW and what they needed. They wanted like everything, like down to the screw, down to the square inch. How much is this building costing us to build? And so working with Unda, we talked to Matthew at Unda and said, hey, can you build something that just spits out the shed object? Because everything in computers is just a bunch of data. And so to make it look like that, obviously there's a bunch of data underlying that and underpinning that. So he built into that program something that would hook, or like an event that every time you make a change, it fires off that object that's now updated with that change. And so our systems, this is where we come in. We would take that object, break it down, understand what this building is, do all the math as to how many screws and whatnot. And then we would built a whole project management backend. So the customer can go in here, twiddle around, do whatever they need to do. And then when they click the get quote button, it sends them a picture of their shed, exactly how they configured it on there. It has the pricing already figured out for them. And then it says, and then these guys on their end, they get the purchase order on their system, and it says everything that they need to do. And then all they have to do is just confirm it. And then they just change the status and away they go.
And is this live now?
Yeah, it's live. You can go to jawportablebuildings.com and they've got a 3D calculator builder right there.
And it's working and spitting out what they need to ship, and so far so good?
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, they love it.
No bugs whatsoever?
No, we haven't really had many bugs with this at all. I mean, at the beginning, obviously there's a little bit of debugging that goes on, but it's been running for a while now, and they come up with other ideas from time to time where they're like, oh, we could do this differently, or we could fix or tweak this, or the latest one was Westform Metals here in town. They're like, oh, how do we connect to their how do we put orders through to them based off of this data? And so we just built that section into their purchase order program, and away we go.
Nice.
So that's pretty fun.
Have you thought about how you can start to build some tech that you own? Like right now, I would imagine this is a project for hire, and you're quoting X and so forth. But are you starting to get some light bulbs go off? You know what? We could maybe do this and offer this type of thing to others. And have you gone down that path in your mind yet?
Yeah, so I understand that path can be a very lucrative one, and it can be very encompassing at the same time. So at this point, not really. So this one was a very unique one-off case. For us to we looked into it just briefly in our office, just being like, I wonder if we could pitch, Matthew at Unda and JAW and be like, hey, I know that JAW owns this, but what do you think about packaging this? And then going to different shed suppliers, especially in Australia. It's a huge thing from what I'm seeing. But it's a little bit too custom, this one. And sometimes your scope can get so large that the project now needs to accompany all kinds of different businesses and their needs, and it's not very pointed anymore, and you kind of lose that. But definitely something that we consider going into every project, because it brings the cost down for the client too, if we can make it something that we can resell. But we haven't done a ton of projects like that yet.
Another one was called EasyMail. And describe what this is.
Yeah, so I built that at my time with ARPA, and it was a very simple, this is the, 6th iteration. They've been doing it for a while, and then So we built out a system that you've kind of got these 4 steps. You put in your basic contact information, then it gives you all the topics that obviously ARPA is passionate about and wants you to write your MP about. And then people like me and probably like some of you, if you're not a great wordsmith, then this definitely helps out because it's got a little snippets panel, and then you can just fire off all the different snippets that they recommend. And then of course on the right-hand side of the screen here, we have the edit pane where you could actually just tweak it a little bit, add your own flair, and just be like, build off of those snippets, right? Be like, oh yeah, right, it's talking about this. Oh, I could put in my own personal story here or something, right? And then, so it's really quick, and you can fire off an email in like under 2 minutes if you're probably just clicking through the prompts, but really quick, right? Rather, it takes out all the guesswork sometimes, and yeah, it's great.
Another project for ARPA was called ARPA Profiles. Yeah. What is this? Yeah,
so I built this idea based off of they had a saying at ARPA, action inspires action, and it's so true. The more you see people do things, especially in the political realm, the more you're inspired to maybe do that same thing. Doesn't mean you will. And I've always had this heart for youth and getting them involved and getting them engaged and gamifying or making a game of some sort. So I was like, this is a great way to kind of just take it and run with it a bit. So it's almost like it's not like a social media, so to speak. It's more of the game is the more of the focus is like, oh, if you do this, you get this many points. And then if you do this, you get this many points. And then these students are all competing, different schools are competing for the top spot. And so we built ARPA Profiles, and then this also needs to be said. I built a back-end system called ARPA Codebase, which controls literally everything. So that way, you're like if you send off an easy mail, it's already logged in here, and so everything just kind of fires wherever their CRM is hooked into that. And,
right. Yeah. I think that sounds similar to what you're doing here, right? With your own central code base management tool that you've created. You're using this to create your websites essentially?
Not this one. This one is more just I didn't really know how to, this was just kind of a pet project for fun. But same kind of thing. Yeah. It's kind of like a custom back-end system to kind of give you an idea as to what we could do. Obviously I can't share photos of sensitive stuff. So I was like, hey, this one kind of works. It's just my own little pet project that I was having fun with. And so you code your own integrations or whatever, and then you can enable them, disable them, and then hook up different jobs and whatnot. And so this just kind of was just like, oh, here's an idea of a code base-esque kind of thing where you're linking in multiple different APIs and trying to get them all to work together, or even your custom APIs.
That I'd be remiss not to talk about. I think in 2019, you saw an ad for a Chilliwack hackathon and went to UFV, and we put that on annually through the Chilliwack Innovation Network, and Colin really heads that up. And you were really the way it's in many ways supposed to run. You come individually, you meet somebody else, Tony, who happens to be here today. You guys jam on a project. Tony had an idea to do a management software for car stereo installers, and you guys worked 24 hours on it, pitched it, and you won.
Yeah, we jammed all right. It was a good time, but I think I would be remiss in saying that it wasn't actually 24 hours. Tony and I took the wise approach and said, we're getting some sleep. And so we went home. We had like a full, I don't know, maybe 6 hours of sleep. Yeah, 6 hours of sleep. And then we got back to it. And I don't know if that was a differentiator, but it was nice.
Yeah, that was a good marriage of the business side, because Tony had really spent a lot of time thinking about what he wanted to build, and then the technical side, and you guys getting to a minimal viable product and doing a demo. And since then, I know Tony's made a business out of it, and he's but that was really the seed and the start along the way. So yeah, that's cool. So again, just scratching your own itch and fixing things, and so scaling, you touched on it, and we could ask Josiah right now to give a reverse 360 to review on his new boss, but from what I can tell, it's going really well. So what's next for Daniel and the team and Evolve Digital?
Yeah. So moving forward, we're looking to, again, I think the main part of our business model is our custom software. I think that's the biggest value add that we give to businesses. All the other stuff, you can hire other people. We actually have a contractor who works part-time, almost exactly 50% part-time. And he does a lot of the ads, SEO, keyword stuff for us. And then Josiah is our full-time webmaster. So you can kind of see where we're putting our emphasis on, and that's our greatest value that we can provide to people. But then the hard part that I'm learning right now is how do you connect with these people, right? There's so many jobs you can get from word of mouth, and that can be good and bad. And I think as you grow, as you scale, you need to find a way to, show other people what you're capable of, what you can do, and then connecting with those people, networking, bidding. I think we might start bidding on some RFPs and stuff like that. But we also have a lot of work that might happen, might not. Like we've done a project proposal, and now we're just waiting to hear back, right? And so that's the next phase. I think will be if we can get more of those jobs, then it's much easier to scale because then you have a very long timeline rather than just these little jobs that you definitely still want to keep, because if you have an existing relationship with a lot of businesses, then when they do have a problem, you can immediately help them, which is another part of the business that I'm really passionate about. So
it sounds like your business is scaled primarily at this point through referral and recommendation, and largely built, I guess, around your huge church community. Like, have you found that obviously opens a lot of doors and so forth, but sometimes referral can be a double-edged sword, right? Like, even I saw one of your posts was, Daniel, the wedding guy, like, and you're trying to maybe pivot and do something else. Have you found that you're able to grow and start charging more and within that, or are you having to look outside of that community?
Right. Yeah. So that was the big one, was the community thought I was the video guy. With the exception of people who were really tuned into ARPA, and then they knew that, hey, he's a techie. So that's a challenging thing. I think, like, moving forward, I'm learning a lot right now as to how can we get outside contracts or get these bigger contracts that are outside of the community, and then build those connections. And then, so right now I would say it's a big learning thing. I'm definitely doing a lot of reading on it, a lot of project planning, talking to multiple different people who've been in that kind of space, whether it be bidding on RFPs like government work, or whether it be just cold outreach, lead generation, that kind of stuff. Like, just trying a little bit of everything, and just trying to see what's best. And I think if I was to say that's the biggest weakness right now, that's my biggest weakness, is I need to work on how can I attract and not immediately sell, but be able to communicate what we do effectively, and so that way people can understand, okay, this is what they do, and then if people are problem aware, that they'll understand, hey, I have this problem and you can fix it, right? Just being able to make that happen is the next learning curve in my life, I guess.
Yeah, well, I really want to thank you for coming on Launch Stories. I've really only interviewed folks that have been in business for a very long time, and they're looking back on but you're crushing it. You've been doing this for only a year, and I can just see that you're really on to things and are growing rapidly, and keep it up.
Yeah,
so
thanks.
Let's hear it for Daniel.
Thank you.
Speaking of some folks that have been in business for, in some cases, decades, we've got a lot of experience in the audience. Why don't we turn it over to Colin? He's always good for a first question, and see what he's got for you.
Thanks for coming out and sharing your story so far. It's awesome, actually. We talk about having people on the stage from different backgrounds, and to have someone early on in their journey sharing what that's like, well, you still remember it. And I hope that's encouraging to other people, actually, and can learn from that. So thanks. My question is, the word AI didn't come up at all, and maybe that's on purpose, maybe it isn't. Tell me what your thoughts are on AI, what your customers' demand is for it today, and after the bubble bursts, what's it going to look like?
After the bubble bursts, interesting. Yeah, I don't think it was intentional. I think it was it just didn't really come up. But I love AI. When it first came out, I was tickled pink because I'm a programmer, and so you can imagine that when you could just put in your code base into AI and tell it to do things. I mean, it was at the beginning, it was terrible. Actually, it was like, no, do this, and it's like spit something else out, and you're just like, oh, this is more work than it's worth. But now it's really coming around, and definitely presents a lot of opportunities. And I think some of my clients, because they're not so computer literate sometimes, or they're maybe they are computer literate, but they're just they're too focused on what they're doing, right? Providing the value that AI provides them, I think, is a huge benefit there, especially like I'm thinking especially of like just the general questions about their product or whatever. I think could be a really big value add. In terms of ourselves, I had a ChatGPT subscription. I canceled it once my IDE, for those of you who don't know, an IDE is what you do all your coding usually in. It kind of did it automatically on the side. So now I have my own language model that analyzes all my code, has all my code base at its fingertips, and is able to understand what I need. And then I can just tell it like, hey, I need this. And then it's very great for encoding. There's so much create, read, update, delete, boilerplate, we call it, stuff. I mean, you would know what it is, but and so there's a lot of boilerplate that now can be eliminated, and that has been fantastic. So yeah, really love it.
Anybody else?
Well, I'm going to circle back to the second half of my question then. What comes after the bubble burst?
Ooh. Yeah, I think it's natural with everything to kind of go up and down. I could see how there could be a potential for a bubble, I guess. Or sometimes these promises that people are making that AI just can't do, and we don't know if it can do it in the future. So I don't really know about that one. I just know that it's a great tool that I would want to use moving forward, and it's definitely shown itself capable. But in terms of what it can do right now, it seems like things keep coming out that are endless possibilities. It keeps learning, but I think it is going to plateau like any other technology. And when it does, I think the reality versus the expectations are going to be mismatched, and there's going to be a bit of a correction there. But in terms of like how it affects our business and what we're doing day to day, I don't think it's necessarily as influential to what we're doing.
Going once, going twice, going three times? Wim's always got some good questions.
You did so well. Like, there's nothing questions on.
Okay.
I guess I'll ask one. Just I don't think we really talked about the business model, but I guess how much recurring services have you been able to build out, or like how much depend on the one-time projects versus recurring?
Yeah, so right now 70-30 roughly. So 30% being recurring. It's not an at-cost venture, but it's definitely not like a cash cow either. It's more, you have the foot in the door, you have a relationship with people. I'm really big on having a relationship with people rather than just trying to sell them on something and leaving again. So I love that part more sometimes but it also makes you run on your feet a lot, because they kind of expect the world typically when they have small services with you, and then and always that awkward conversation of like, when does it cross a line from being what's in scope versus, okay, now you're asking us for a feature that's going to be an opposite bill out, right? So I'd say probably 30-70, but the 70 does much better for revenue, but it's still about 30-70, I'd say.
So do you do any of like the reporting or analytics or SEO, just regular maintenance as a monthly package?
Yeah. So we do that. So we provide that kind of with also the not expectation, but the communication to them that, hey, we're webmasters. Like, we do this for you because we understand how the web works from a ground up kind of perspective. And we have great guys like this Jacob guy who I mentioned briefly. He's amazing at what he does. And so having him on the team is great, because then he can really provide a lot of value, but then always having that expectation of like, hey, if you need anything custom, anything, just let us know. And then it's pretty impressive, because once they know that, then And once they're kind of plugged in because they're interested in you because you do their SEO and web maintenance and stuff, then you'll get the odd web management contract that comes your way.
And have you had to fire any clients yet? Or do you plan to maybe?
Yeah, there's definitely been some clients that you definitely learn how to interact with. Okay, what's kind of your star client? Who's like, so for example, Job Portable Buildings, star client. It's amazing. Like they're great. Match the energy too. I think sometimes that also matters, like just the synergy between you and your client. So they want things done yesterday, and I want things done yesterday. So it's a great working relationship. And but there's other clients, right? They expect the world, but then they'll pay you peanuts. So typically I try to keep away from those, but also understand at the same time we're small right now. And so like I would say if it's really bad, I ignore it almost and just be like, hey, sorry, try to be nice about it. And so, like we're not going to be able to work for you anymore. But for the most part, I'd say most of our clients are great for that. And I think that comes down to just saying the yes to begin with. You kind of have that gut feeling.
We'll ask you the same question in 3 years.
Yeah. But then it'll definitely be a bunch more, I'm sure.
Yeah. Well done. Really great start to your business, and you continue to really impress me. And thanks so much for sharing your launch story.
Yeah,
Let's hear it for
thanks.
Daniel.